Yes, we are talking about nature today. Good morning, Shay.
Good morning, Ms. Ruiz.
I think we got everybody's good mornings. So these two chapters, 18 and 20, are about ecology. It's a scientific study of the interactions between organisms and their environment. And normally when we talk about ecology, we're just talking about what happens out in nature naturally without human interference. We're also going to talk about human interference, but when we're talking about the levels of ecology or anything happening out there, we're not talking about us. We're talking about plants, animals, fungus, bacteria without our influence. So there's 5 levels. You got the individual, the population, community, ecosystem, biome, and biosphere. Many different factors can potentially affect an organism's interaction with their environment. And biotic, they're separated into categories of biotic factors and abiotic factors. Biotic just means they're living. Abiotic means they are not living. Biotic factors are all the organisms in the area and the living component of the environment. And then abiotic are the environment's non-living components, include chemical and physical factors such as temperature, light, water, minerals, air, soil. So all of the non-living things are still important for the ecosystem to survive properly, to function. They just happen to be not living. An organism's habitat is the specific environment it lives in, includes the biotic and abiotic factors of its surroundings. Ecology can be divided into 4 increasingly comprehensive levels, and it all has to do with that original levels of ecology chart. Organisms, populations, communities, ecosystems. Each has its own level. An ecologist can just study one level or they can study multiple levels. There are some ecologists that just study single individual organisms. There are other biology ecologists that study the entire ecosystem. These are just examples. One organism, a population of penguins. Community is all of the living things, plants and animals in an area, and the ecosystem includes all the biotic and abiotic factors. So an organism is any individual living thing. So organismal ecology is concerned with evolutionary adaptations that enable an individual organisms to meet the challenges posed by their abiotic environments. Challenges like water, how much water do they need? Where are they going to get it? Shelter, how are they going to hide? How are they going to live and hide from predators? The individual adaptations that help them do all that. Population ecology addresses populations, groups of individuals of the same species living in a particular geographic area, and concentrates mainly on factors that affect population density and growth. So this is a chart of humans. You see it a lot during election time. And it's, when it first starts, there's a lot of red and only a little bit of blue. But the end is the population density, where people actually live. A lot of those red states have a lot of open farmland. Nobody actually lives there. Or maybe one person lives on acres and acres and acres of land. So population density is how many people live in a specific area. And in ecology, how many certain animals live in a specific area. That's population density. Community ecology is concerned with communities, all of the organisms that inhabit a particular area. and focuses on how interactions between species affect a community's structure and organization. A lot of those interactions are predator-prey interactions. What is the predator? What is the prey? How does the prey try to hide from the predator? How does the prey group up, form groups to protect each other? Or even predators, how do they form groups to hunt food? That is part of community ecology. And then ecosystem ecology, concerned with ecosystems, which is all of the abiotic factors in addition to the community of species in a certain area. And this focuses a lot on energy flow and the cycling of chemicals among the various abiotic and biotic factors. You guys have all heard of the water cycle and the carbon cycle. Well, nitrogen has a cycle, phosphorus has a cycle. There's a lot of different chemicals that cycle through environments. The evolutionary adaptations of organisms, back to the organismal ecology. So the ability of organisms to live in Earth's diverse environments demonstrates the close relationship between the fields of ecology and evolutionary biology. Evolutionary adaptation via natural selection results from the interaction between organisms and their environments. Who is best suited to a certain environment and why? What structures actually make that possible? What physical structures on the organism help them survive in their certain habitats? Biomes are a major terrestrial or aquatic life zone, characterized by vegetation type and terrestrial biomes. Terrestrial biomes are just land. And then the physical environment in aquatic biomes. You can see the map. Those are a list of all the different biomes and where they're found on Earth: tropical rainforest, temperate forest, desert, tundra, taiga, grassland, savanna, freshwater, marine. We'll talk about the difference between those two. Aquatic biomes occupy roughly 75% of the Earth's surface, and they are determined by their salinity, which is their salt concentration, as well as other physical factors. But their salinity is the main one. Freshwater biomes have a salt concentration of less than 1% and include lakes, streams, rivers, and wetlands. Marine biomes typically have a salt concentration of around 3% and include oceans, intertidal zones, coral reefs, and estuaries. So the only difference between a lake and an ocean, the ocean has 3% salt, and freshwater only has 1% salt. And if you've ever been to the ocean and tasted the water, you know how salty the ocean water is. That's only 3%. It doesn't take much salt to make it taste like that. Freshwater biomes cover less than 1% of Earth. They contain a mere 0.01% of its water. They harbor 6% of all described species. And they're used for drinking water, crop irrigation, sanitation, and other industry. Our lakes and our rivers are very, very important to us and our way of life. So it's very important not to pollute or poison them. Wetlands is a traditional biome between an aquatic system and a terrestrial one. They support the growth of aquatic plants and are rich in species diversity. Marine biomes are diverse, ranging from vivid coral reefs to perpetually dark realms in the deepest regions. On the left, you have a coral reef biome. If you've ever seen Finding Nemo, he lives on a coral reef. And that's actually what some of them look like. And hopefully they will stay that way. The right is an estuary. It's a transition area between a river and the ocean. And that is a satellite image of a certain river flowing into the ocean, or a set of rivers flowing into the ocean. Terrestrial biomes. Terrestrial is a fancy word for earth or dirt. So these are the land ecosystems that are grouped into biomes, primarily on the basis of their vegetation type or their plant life. Tropical forest, savanna, desert, chaparral, temperate grasslands, forest, rainforest, tundra, and polar ice. There's a whole crash course ecology about the different biomes of the world. But we're not doing a crash course web puzzle this week, actually. We're doing more of a web quest. Chemical cycles. Many elements are cycled through an environment in various ways and are greatly affected by human activities, namely the destruction of forests, the burning of fossil fuels, and the pumping of large amounts of groundwater to the surface for irrigation, which is also known as fracking. Environmental people want to ban fracking, because it's just another way us humans take advantage and destroy the environment. Energy only flows in one direction, but it can be recycled. Carbon and oxygen cycles are driven by plants and animals through photosynthesis and respiration. We breathe in oxygen, we breathe out carbon dioxide, and plants do the opposite. They give us our oxygen, and then they take in the carbon dioxide. Hydrologic, or the water cycle, links the aquatic and terrestrial biomes. There's a couple different crash courses about the different cycles. The water cycle is something you learn in elementary school. And then chapter 20. Ecosystem diversity. The local extinction of one species can have a negative effect on the entire ecosystem. That is actually something called a trophic cascade, and that is what your web quest assignment is on this week. The disappearance of natural ecosystems results in the loss of ecosystem services, functions performed by an ecosystem that directly or indirectly benefit people, including air and water purification, climate regulation, and erosion control. So like Julia Roberts said at the beginning, nature doesn't need us, but we need nature. There's a lot of things we use nature for, and we overuse it. Coral reefs are rich in species diversity, yet an estimated 20% of the world's coral reefs have been destroyed by human activities. And in 2011, which was 10 years ago, a study found that 75% of the remaining coral reefs are threatened, climbing to 90% by 2030 if current abuse continues. And I'm pretty sure the numbers are higher now. On the picture, you have a coral reef on the left that is alive. And on the right, when they go white, that is like their skeleton. They are dead when you see the white. It's kind of the same picture. It's healthy on the left in December 2014. February 2015, it's dying. It's in the process of dying when it's white. It's called coral bleaching, and then it's completely dead by the next year. Not even by the next year, 6 months later. Cause of declining biodiversity is, in a nutshell, us. Ecologists have identified 4 main factors responsible for the loss of biodiversity: habitat destruction and fragmentation, invasive species, overexploitation, and pollution. And those four things are directly connected to human activities. Habitat destruction. Why is that doing that? There we go. Habitat destruction. Biodiversity is threatened by the destruction and fragmentations of habitats by agriculture, urban development, forestry, and mining. So we destroy huge forests because we want to live there, or we want to build a ranch there. We want to build houses. We use trees and wood for a lot of other things too. So we just want to cut down the trees and use their wood for stuff. Invasive species compete with, prey upon, and parasitize native species in a given environment. A little blurb.
Rapidly growing, consuming, adapting, they conquer, jeopardizing local economies, threatening human health, and devastating entire ecosystems.
As whole rows of cherished landmarks are condemned, brought home to town-dwelling citizens are the rigid precautions being taken by the Department of Agriculture to save this tree from extinction.
Invasive species are non-native organisms that cause considerable damage when introduced to a new area. These species compete with native wildlife for resources and thrive at the expense of the local ecosystem. The introduction of invasive species is often associated with human activity. Boats that travel between different bodies of water can carry hitchhikers, such as the zebra mussel. One of the most notorious invasive species in the United States, these rapidly reproducing mussels clog pipes and overtake beaches in the Great Lakes. Some invasive species, however, are introduced intentionally. In the early 20th century, cane toads were brought to Australia as a form of pest control. Today, these poisonous amphibians number in the millions and have caused a decline in native predators on the island. It's not just animals. Bacteria, fungi, and plants can also become invasive. Brought to South Africa in the 19th century, the black wattle is an invasive tree often used for timber and firewood. This beautiful tree and other thirsty invasives are depleting the country's already record-low water supply. Because of their impact on human health, ecosystems, and infrastructure, invasive species cost the global economy over $1 trillion each year. Many measures can be taken to help limit the spread of invasive species, but the most effective method is prevention. By carefully cleaning boats before transferring between different bodies of water, not releasing exotic pets into the wild, and planting gardens with native species, we can help prevent the spread of invasive organisms. Every living thing has evolved to play a specialized role within their ecosystem. In the ultimate balancing act, even one invasive species can drastically tilt the scales. If we stay mindful of our role in the spread of these organisms, we can prevent invasions before it is too late.
So that is invasive species. Overexploitation is also a problem. People have overexploited wildlife by harvesting at rates that exceed the ability of populations to rebound. Overharvesting has greatly affected populations of tigers, the American bison, and Galapagos tortoises. Our penchant for sushi has also depleted the oceans of certain kinds of fish. The picture right there is our shark fins. It's actually from a video called Racing Extinction that we usually watch if we're in person. But if you ever get the chance to watch Racing Extinction, watch it. Pollution, air or water pollution, is a contributing factor of declining populations of hundreds of species. Acid precipitation is a threat to ecosystems. And ocean acidification, the ocean becoming more and more acid-like, is also a threat to a lot of different species. The global water cycle can transport pollutants from terrestrial to aquatic ecosystems hundreds of miles away. The Earth breathes every year, and every year humans clog up their breathing more and more. Interspecific interactions are interactions between species. In mutualism, both species benefit from an interaction, like the clownfish and their coral reefs. Predation refers to an interaction in which one species, the predator, kills and eats the other species, known as the prey. Parasites are animals that live in or on a host from which they obtain nutrients. Predator avoidance. There's numerous adaptations for predator avoidance. They've evolved in prey populations through natural selection. Those who hide better will live longer and pass their genes on to their offspring. Cryptic coloration, otherwise known as camouflage, but in the middle, that is an actual, I think it's a beetle, but it's some kind of insect that looks exactly like a leaf. That hides very, very well from predators because it just looks like the leaf they live on. Warning coloration. Everyone knows frogs, brightly colored frogs, they are poisonous. Animals know they are poisonous and they stay away. Mimicry. On the bottom, the two snakes. One is venomous, one is not, but they look enough alike. Their coloring is very similar that animals leave it alone because they don't want to get poisoned. And then disguises on the bottom right, owl butterfly mimicry. That butterfly evolved spots on its wings that look like an owl's eyes. Owls are pretty fierce predators, so animals leave them alone because they don't want to mess with the owls. Trophic structure, the feeding relationships among the various species in a community. A community's trophic structure determines the passage of energy and nutrients from plants and other photosynthetic organisms to herbivores and then to higher level predators up the food chain. Trophic levels is the sequence of food transfer between trophic levels. It's called a food chain. The trophic level that supports all other trophic levels consists of autotrophs, which ecologists call producers. They produce their own food from the sunlight. And all organisms in trophic levels above the producers are heterotrophs or consumers. Everybody should have seen a food chain at some point in their life. Primary consumers, which are the first level above the producers, are called herbivores, which only eat the plants. Above the level of primary consumers are carnivores or even omnivores, which eat the consumers from the level below. And they just go in number order: primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary. And they each eat the level below them. These are examples. On the left is a terrestrial food chain you would find on land. On the right, that is an aquatic food chain found in the ocean. Some consumers derive their energy from detritus, which is the dead material left by all trophic levels when they die, decompose. Their nutrients go back into the soil for plant roots to suck up. Scavengers such as crows and vultures feast on carcasses or dead bodies of different animals. Detrivores such as earthworms and millipedes primarily consume decaying organic material. And then decomposers, mainly prokaryotes and fungi, secrete enzymes that digest molecules in organic material and convert the organic materials into inorganic forms. They take the complex building blocks and break them down into simpler building blocks and put them back in the soil. Biological magnification. Toxins become concentrated as they pass through a food chain in the process called biological magnification.
Let's examine how human actions may impact pond species. For example, if there is improper waste disposal, spilling toxic chemicals into a pond and killing off the algae, it will decrease the number of herbivores, which will then decrease the number of top-level carnivores. In this case, the more toxins you have, the more the herbivore population decreases, which in turn decreases your predator population. Biomagnification is the increase in concentrations of harmful substances in the environment as they pass through successive trophic levels of food chains and food webs. When even larger fish eat those tiny zooplankton feeding fish, the larger fish contain an even greater amount of toxins in their body. By the time top-level predators like cranes consume the toxic fish, the crane's body becomes so toxic that their ability to function, reproduce, or live full-length lives may become impaired. In other words, organisms at low trophic levels ingest small amounts of toxins, which magnify as animals on the next trophic level consume those low-level organisms. And this effect will grow with each succeeding trophic level. Bioaccumulation is the increase in concentration of harmful toxins within an organism. For example, if a fish is continually exposed to toxins throughout its lifetime, it may experience chronic poisoning and a shortened lifespan. The impacts of toxins are unique and may impact an organism in very unique ways. It's also important to remember that different toxins impact different elements within an ecosystem. One type of toxin may impact animals directly, while another may have indirect effects through bioaccumulation or biomagnification, killing off top-level predators. The impact of most man-made chemicals are still unknown, particularly the long-term impacts of these chemicals. If we continue putting chemicals into the environment and allow those chemicals to biomagnify, the impact may have extreme effects on humans as well. Our actions and even our thoughts and words have an impact on the world around us. It's not enough to discuss the impact of humans on the environment. What's lacking is compassion and the understanding that we are deeply connected to nature. Only when we come to love and respect nature will the planet have any hope of surviving the current 6th mass extinction. Let's examine
The food webs. Few ecosystems are as simple as an unbranched food chain. The feeding relationships in a community are usually woven into elaborate food webs. Omnivores eat producers and consumers. A simple terrarium is a community that interacts with abiotic factors. You can actually buy these to decorate your house. They're really pretty. Energy flow is the passage of energy through components of the ecosystem. And then chemical cycling is the use and reuse of chemical elements such as carbon and nitrogen within the system. A terrarium is an enclosed ecosystem that survives without any interference from us. I think the oldest terrarium that a scientist have is like 40 years old, and he's never opened it to water any of the plants, anything. It's enclosed, it makes its own water source through photosynthesis. Ecological pyramids. When energy flows as organic matter through the trophic levels of an ecosystem, much of it is lost at each link in the food chain as heat. Consider the example of the caterpillar. The caterpillar eats plants, it's an herbivore. If it eats 100 kilocalories, which is what our calories are, it'll use 35 calories for cellular respiration, it'll use 15 calories for growth, and it will use 50 calories to make feces, which is waste. So at least half of it gets wasted. A pyramid of production illustrates the cumulative loss of energy with each transfer in a food chain. The energy level available to the next higher level ranges from 5 to 20% and is averaged out as 10%. So we call this the 10% law. So if there's at the bottom, if there's 1 million calories of sunlight, the plants will absorb and use 10,000 calories of it. At the next level, the herbivores or primary consumers, they only get 1,000 calories. Secondary consumers only get 100, and tertiary consumers only get 10. So at each link in the food chain, energy is lost. A lot of energy is lost each time. The energy available to top-level consumers is very small, as you can see in that pyramid on the last slide, compared to the energy available to the lower-level consumers. And this explains why top-level consumers require more geographic area because they need more food to keep their bodies going. And then most food chains are limited 3 to 5 levels. If there are any more than that, there's just no more energy. There's no more energy available to support anything above 5 levels.